Hello everyone and welcome to the sixth chapter of my Dxe4 repertoire, the second part. In this particular chapter, we're going to be covering the fantasy variation arising after D5. White plays the small-looking, little-looking F3 move, defending the center. And the main point is to answer the most popular D takes on E4 by taking with a pawn. And now Black plays the move E5, trying to challenge White's center. And now we're going to be playing the move Knight F3. So far, not really that many alternatives. Obviously, we've covered the sidelines in the previous chapter. So make sure to check that one out in case you haven't. But it would be strange to be here without covering the previous one. But anyways, we're gonna be looking at some of Black's options in this position, and yeah, I think there are really two main moves that Black will play. I think the most popular one by far would be E takes on D4. I think you're gonna be facing this line quite a lot, and I really see it as one of the lines where you can actually gain a lot of wins, especially by gaining quite a large advantage from the opening. And yeah, I think the other sort of maybe quarter of your games, I don't really think half of your opponents will play Bishop G4 in this position, but I would say maybe like 1/4 will go for Bishop G4 here, and most of them are gonna take on D4, and maybe very few play Bishop E6 in this position. And we're going to be discussing about all these three moves that Black has, and yeah, I think that's enough as an overview for this chapter. And we're going to be diving right into the more concrete stuff, and we're going to be looking at this 5 Bishop E6 move. And what you really need to understand about this line is that Black is preparing to play, some sort of Knight D7, and the point is that Black is sort of inviting us to take on E5, so that Black can play this annoying Queen H4 move. So even easier to see. Here you can see that Black is gonna be winning his E4 pawn, and we should never really allow such things. So therefore, after Bishop E6, I recommend we play the move C3, which is simply strengthening our center, and we're preparing to play Bishop D3. As you will see a little bit later, we're going for a very similar setup to what we do against the Bishop G4 move, and yeah, I think we can continue with the line. So Black plays Knight F6 usually, attacking the E4 pawn. We play Bishop to D3. And now Black goes Knight B to D7. Here we're going to be playing for short castle, and Black usually goes Bishop to D6, trying to control the E5 square. And in this position, Bishop G5 is also a sensible alternative, but I really like to just follow the footsteps of Alexander Morozevich and just play the move King H1. And this move is sort of always very useful for White, because whenever you have this kind of formation where White has castle and then the F pawn is missing, King H1 is always a nice move to, sometimes sidestep any potential shenanigans on the G1 A7 diagonal. Or in this particular case, we actually have a little bit more of a concrete idea. We do play King H1 so that we can play Bishop E3, and in case Black goes for this aggressive Knight G4 move, we have a very safe square for the Bishop on G1. And this might sound like a little bit of a surprising maneuver for the newer players, but this is actually a very good square for the Bishop, since it's very safe on G1, it's defending our center, and we can also kick the enemy knight by pushing H3, basically at any time. And then, we can even, go back with a Bishop to E3, or even improve it by going Bishop to H2, from where it's going to be putting pressure on the E5 pawn. But I think it's enough talking about this position, and we can go a little bit deeper with the theory. In this position, I've covered 2 plans. One is to castle long side for black, and the other one is to go short. We're going to be covering the long castle next. Here we're going to be continuing with the bishop e3, which is the logical follow-up of having played king h1. Castles long up by black, knight b2 d2, and here I've covered the move h5, which I think is kind of a logical move when we have this kind of opposite castling situation. So queen c2, as you will see, is a very natural move and a very natural square for the queen in these structures, because the queen from c2 is keeping the e4 pawn well protected. Black can try to throw in knight g4, but as I said, bishop g1 is the way to go. And yeah, just a quick mention here. As I said a little bit earlier, we can always kick the knight with h3. And we can play h3, but we wouldn't really necessarily be that happy to take on g4 and open up the h file for the enemy rook, because this would be kind of horrible for us. So there's no need to play h3 just yet. We can just ignore the knight for the time being, and we can try to focus on the other side of the board and try to create some attacking play against the enemy king. So after bishop g1, I found out that ed4 is the best move for black, and after pawn takes bishop f4, with the idea to play for some kind of knight e3 move to infiltrate in white's camp. But I like here going bishop to c4. The idea is to play knight c4 without allowing black to trade it, so that's why we're going bishop c4 first. And then black does something like knight f6, we can take, and then now we can just throw in this h3 move. We're not really threatening to take on g4, but it's a useful move, because at some point, it's kind of forcing this rook to stay on the h file. So black plays knight e3, we can trade. Obviously only move because black was forking, and now we can go knight c4, attacking the enemy bishop, and yeah, black has to play bishop f4, because taking on d4 would allow some e5 ideas. And after bishop f4, we can play knight f to e5, and you can see that white has a very nice position, because black has to deal with this threat of rook takes on f4, and in case of bishop takes on e5, we can even take with a pawn on e5, and then yeah, after something like this, we will have ideas to join the d6 square pretty soon. So this would be sort of an example line against what happens when black goes for the long castle. But it would be from my point of view more normal to go on the short side, and I think you're more likely to face this short castle plan, where I actually like the bishop g5 approach instead of going bishop to e3, because we're creating pressure on the king side. It wouldn't really have been having the same impact as it does here in the previous line, because black wasn't really committed on the king side. So now it's just like much better to go for this. And after queen to c7, we're going to be playing the move knight b to d2. And for example, our plan is, if black goes rook e8, we're going to be playing the move queen e1. And yeah, we have ideas of bringing the queen to h4. And black simply doesn't really have much to do in this position, since our pawn center is kind of restricting his pieces. So white has a nice edge. And after the more normal rook f to e8, I really like playing knight c4 in this position, offering black some options. And if black goes for the tricky move, which is knight takes on e4, with the idea that bishop takes on e4 would allow bishop takes on c4, then we actually take on d6. Black has only move to take with a knight. And here after knight takes, pawn takes, knight e4 is a very tricky attempt by black, where we should just avoid going for bishop e4, queen e5, because black will regain the piece with a fine position. But we can play bishop f4, keeping the bishop pair, and now black has to move the knight. But after bishop c2, we're keeping the bishop pair. We are ready to play queen h5 on the next move. and create additional weaknesses on the king side. I mean, just imagine after queen h5, black plays like g6. Then we can play something like maybe even queen h6, and then yeah, just so you understand what I'm saying, we can try to get something like this, and then hopefully eventually we can mate black on g7. So white has a nice position here, and yeah, with that being said, I think this is already more than enough of what you should know against this bishop e6 move. As I said, I don't really find this as popular as the other moves, but I think you still need to be aware of it, as it's one of the very playable lines that that black has. So in this position, we're going to be covering the Ed4 move, which I think is very popular. I think this is maybe like the most popular move in especially online games, according to the Lee Chess database at least, and it's also highly popular in over-the-board chess as well. And then after we cover Ed4, we will be coming back to the main line, which is bishop to g4, following Erwin Lami's course on the Caro Kann. So after he takes on d4, the key idea is to play bishop to c4 and not really rush to recapture the pawn, and we're mostly focusing on quick development. Black has here quite a wide choice between knight f6, bishop e6, and knight to d7. But we will start with the move knight to f6, which I think it's maybe the most popular move online. It's really one of the most popular lines, especially from what I've also faced in my own games. So I have quite a lot of experience playing these lines, and you will see in a minute why. So here the move is to go for short castle. Black is really not able to take on e4, because that would allow rook e1, and the knight is pinned. Black has to support it with f5, but after the simple looking knight e2, bishop e7, we can take on e4 and play the move knight e5, and white is just crashing here. Look at the enemy king caught in the center of the board. Queen h5 is a huge threat, because g6 can be met with knight takes on g6, and white is just completely winning already. So knight takes on e4, not really a thing here for black, but you know what black can play? Black can try to prepare the move short castle, and he can do that by either bishop e7 or the move bishop to c5. Both moves are preparing the same thing with short castle. Bishop z5 looks a little bit more active, but we will start by covering the move bishop e7 first. But I really want you to pay attention to these lines. Against this bishop e7, it's a little bit easier than it's against bishop c5. Bishop c5 is like a little bit trickier. Still, white gets a much better position, but then you have to kind of understand some small nuances in the opening. Here against bishop e7, it's not really the case. You can just go knight g5. Just remember this idea, because black now has huge problems with the f7 square. So only move is really to castle short. And now here comes the key. Sort of, I think you can even call this a trap. I think this qualifies as a trap, but it's one of those traps that are really sound, and there's simply nothing really that black can do. Because we can take on f7. Notice that here we are taking with a rook, with a knight, and in the other line that we will see with bishop c5, we prefer to take with the bishop. So in this case, it's simply much better to take with a knight, because we're attacking the enemy queen. So black has to take with the rook. Actually, now that I'm thinking about the other line as well, we're attacking the queen there as well. But yeah, in this case, black doesn't really have any other good moves at his disposal. And this seems a little bit odd that I'm telling you this, but you will see when we cover the bishop c5 line that there are actually some very tricky details that you need to be aware of. So knight f7, black doesn't really have anything better at this point than rook takes, and here you will see the final point. Here we just invested 2 minors for a rook, which is usually a bad trade, but we are able to play e5 and win the knight on the next move because of the pin, and we'll actually end up being up the exchange. So white is just up material. The game could continue 97, but after taking a 92, white is simply up on exchange with an easily winning position. So just imagine I had so many games from this kind of positions when you just start the game when you're up in exchange. I mean, how crazy is this? So this is really one of the reasons of why I fell in love with this fantasy variation, and yeah, hopefully you can do that as well. So yeah, with that being said, I think we can move on to the bishop c5 line, because I gave you a lot of warnings already. So I think at this point you just want to see what is going on with this bishop c5 move and what could possibly be the difference. So black plays bishop c5. We're going to be playing the same move, knight g5. I mean, no need to be worried about any sort of tricky d3 check. I mean, we can just sidestep with king h1, and white is in very good shape. But instead of that, black has also a bishop g4 move that is actually quite interesting. A lot of people are just going to go castle, but this is like a funny game that I had online here. Someone after knight g5 played bishop to g4. And this is actually quite a tricky move. Again, like, I don't think this has a lot of theoretical value. Like, if you turn on the engine, this is just completely winning for white. But from my own games, people encountering these tricky situations, they might try some other things. So bishop g4 was played against me, and I decided to include it because I actually I believe I failed to win the game if I haven't even lost it. And I couldn't really refute this line, this is actually something that you need to pay attention when it happens, because white should just be completely winning from the opening. And then I checked this, and the line should go something like bishop takes f7, black plays king e7, and now I have to do something with my queen. There are not really so many moves. I decided to play queen d3. And now here's the tricky part. Black plays the move bishop to e2. I actually think my opponent did not play this move. I think my opponent played h6. But bishop e2 is actually a tricky move. Because if we take it, then d3 will actually be problematic, because black is attacking the queen. And there's this very nasty discovery. So black is just winning here. But after bishop e2, there's a very clever way of dealing with this, and that's to play queen g3. And now nothing really works for black since d3 can be met by king h1. After bishop takes on f1, queen e5 is simply leading to a completely winning position for white, because the enemy king is either getting mated or black will suffer huge material losses. So that's about it. Bishop e2. The other move is to play h6 here. And this could be quite tricky, because it looks like we have to move this knight, and then this bishop is going to lose support. But here's the good move. Here's knight e6, which is not only attacking the queen, but also attacking the bishop. So if black takes twice, then the point is we go queen c4. And we are double attacking both the bishop and the enemy king. And after something like king d6, for example, it looks like black is holding his own here, defending the bishop, but we can simply play e5. And then, black simply has to give up this bishop, and we will be having a completely winning position. So yeah, this is pretty much it about the tricky bishop g4, but the line is not over. Black can play short castle, and you're probably already thinking, I mean, then we just take twice on f7, we go e5, it's the same thing. And that's almost the same thing, but I really want to draw your attention to this, because here's where so many people actually go wrong. Like, I've covered this position. I've spent a lot of time analyzing it, and I also checked the stats. I went through the Dxe4 online database, and I believe like over 1,100 people have actually played the bad move here, which is knight takes on f7. Yes, you heard it. Knight f7, I think, can even be called a blunder, because it's the evaluation jumps from like +2 to -1 for black. So I think it's fair to say we can call this move a blunder. And the reason why this is a blunder is because of the move that nobody plays. Everyone takes on f7 here on the internet. But a great move that black has is queen e7. And all of a sudden, there are no good discovery checks for white. Like, for example, knight g5, black can play king h8. And if e5, black can just throw in this d3 move. After king h1, knight g4. Knight f2 is quite an unpleasant threat, and things are becoming really, really shady for white. So yeah, I mean, black is already clearly better, and we need to stay away from this. And the way to do so, it's by taking on f7 with the bishop. So this is really important here. So I really wanted you to understand this and really remember things. And yeah, I think if you're sort of struggling to remember this line only by watching the video, highly advise you to hop into the move trainer and just grind this line, practice it till you feel comfortable. Because I got this position so many times, and it just would be a pity if you play the other move and instead of getting a winning position, you get a worse one. So yeah, I think really important. And yeah, I've tested this quite a lot. So you take on f7. I think you can go on with the moves now. And if black takes on f7, that's easy peasy. We just take twice and go e5. We collect the knight, and then we're up in exchange with a winning position. So you are familiar with the story by now. But it's a little bit more interesting to see what happens if black just plays king h8, because I think this is the main reason why many people would be skeptical about taking on f7 with the bishop. But here's the thing, we're going to be playing e5, attacking the f6 knight, and after knight d4, we have this super strong queen to d3, threatening to checkmate black brutally with queen takes on h7. So g6 has to be played in order to stop that, but now we have a very strong move. We can just play e6 and just look at how white's pieces are sticking into black's camp. Like here, a simple way to win would be to play bishop f4, followed by h3, and then bishop e5. And the enemy king is just getting checkmated. So white is simply winning in this position. And yeah, I really, again, I'm begging you to take on f7 with the bishop in this position, and not mess things up when knight takes on f7. And yeah, hopefully you will remember this detail. And with that said, we can move on to the other alternatives that black has in this position. So we've covered knight f6. As I said, that's a very popular line that I faced a lot. But black also has some other moves. As for example, bishop to e6, where we can just trade, take on e6, pawn takes, and now we can castle short. I think it's the best move for white. We don't really need to rush with recapturing the pawn. So here black has three moves. We're going to be covering knight to d7 first, where I really like knight g5. Threatening both knight takes on e6 and also to play knight f7. So knight f6 has to be played. After knight takes, queen b6, bishop f4. Threatening to play knight c7. White is simply winning because black is unable to finish his development under good circumstances. So this would be great for us. Instead of knight d7, bishop e7 is another move, but then knight takes on d4 would be great. And after queen d7, defending the pawn, we have this super strong maneuver with queen h5, forcing g6, but now queen e5. All of a sudden, look at the h8 rook. Black has to play bishop f6, but here we can just take twice. And white is completely winning because we have two minors for the rook. So this leaves us with really the main move, which is knight f6 in this position, where we're going to be playing e5, kicking the knight, and after knight e4. We have a little bit of a computerish move, like this is not really first move that comes to mind, but it is the best one, and the best way to go here is to play knight e1, preparing queen f3, both attacking the knight and playing for queen f7. And black is already in a lot of trouble. best move would be to play queen d5, but after queen f3, knight d7. Knight to d2 is the best move, with the idea that knight takes on d2 is answered with the beautiful intermezzo, not allowing black to castle. And then we can recapture the knight with the bishop. And despite being down a pawn, white is just much better because the enemy king is lacking a safe square. So yeah, that's already it about the bishop e6 line, and we're left here with the knight d7 move, which is, I think, objectively black's best line connected with this ed4 move order. But again, I don't think it's that popular. But anyways, as pointed out in Erwin Lamy's course, after the moves castle, knight gf6, and precisely this queen e1 move, white is getting very nice play. As for example, after bishop e7, white is already much better because of e5, knight e5, and now we can take, and mid pawn takes when queen u3. Attacking the g7 pawn, and already black is struggling to defend against that threat, because for example g6 would run into knight takes on d4, bishop c5, can simply play c3, and we can just play continue with like bishop h6, knight d2, bring the rook to e1, and white has a very easy game with a solid advantage. So if after queen g3 black plays short castle, then bishop h6 is a big issue, and because of the threat of queen takes on g7, black has to play g6 and lose the exchange, so white will just be up material in this case. So therefore, after queen e1, knight b6 is a little bit more clever, and after bishop b3, the point is to play bishop e6 now, but still we have this knight g5 move putting pressure on the bishop, and now black has to play this more solid move, which is queen d7, because taking on b3 allows white to grab a quick initiative, because after h6 we are not forced to retreat, but we can play the aggressive e5. Main point being that taking on g5 allows taking on f6, and if the enemy king decides to walk away, we can take on g7, followed by rook takes on f7 with a winning position. So after knight g5, queen to d7, can take on e6 with a knight, develop the bishop with tempo, attacking the f6 knight. After bishop e7, knight e2, black has two moves that I've covered. If in case of e5, can play queen d3, attacking the pawn, and here it's even better than taking on e5 to play bishop h4, hitting the g7 pawn, and after bishop to d6, we can just take on f6, rook takes on f6, and we're having a direct threat of bishop to e6, and other than that, we can just play rook f1, rook s7, with nice pressure on the 7th rank. So white is doing fairly well here. Instead of e5, h6 can also be played, but after bishop h4, castles, queen d3, threatening to play queen h3, hitting the e6 pawn. Black can play king h7, sidestepping the diagonal, but after knight f3, with knight e5 ideas, black can take on e4, but we can have queen g4, attacking the knight, and after knight f6, we can take, and after the important move, pawn takes, rook a e1, preparing to take on e6 to the bishop, and not allowing any other tricks by black. Black plays f5. Now we can take on d4, and after this long line, you will see that we're still down a pawn, but we are going to win the e6 pawn very soon, and then black will still have this weakness on f5. I think the position still should be somewhere around equal, in a way that with perfect play, black can hold, but I really feel like it's going to be much trickier for black to defend once we're going to be putting pressure on that f5 pawn. But I think this is quite a nice outcome from the opening, because black had to really find like a lot of moves, and this is really one of the best lines that black can play, against this whole fantasy. So I think that should pretty much cover 5e takes on d4, and we can finally move on to what I consider the main line. Not really in terms of the number of games. I think this line is still doing quite well in terms of popularity, being up there at the top. But as I said, I think ED4 is a little bit more frequently played, but this is what I consider the main line because it was recently played by Alireza Firuzia with black, who is one of the greatest experts in the Caro Kann nowadays. And this move was also recommended by Erwin Lamy in his great course on the Caro Kann in the lifetime repertoire that I also used this black, and I followed his lines. I prepared from it. It's really good. It's really nice. And yeah, let's see what he recommends against this fantasy. So after bishop to g4, bishop c4 could be an alternative, but I really just like to stick with c3 because we're following the footsteps of Fabiano Caruana. So as you already know, when it comes to 1e4 Fury, one of the main guys that you want to watch out is Fabiano Caruana, the world number 2. Who is playing 1e4 in most of his games, unlike Magnus Carlsen, who is playing many stuff, many openings there. He's mixing things up a lot, but Fabiano, mostly 1e4, and therefore it's really interesting to see what he does. So seeing him playing this, picking up this fantasy, and playing it in the top events, I think it's already like a very good sign for the fantasy players. And also I think, this is also thanks to the very strong engines, Lila Zero and Stockfish, that are giving the fantasy variation among one of the very best, if you turn them on move 3. So I think that's also a sign. So after c3, black can play 2 moves. Knight d7 is the main one, but we're going to be covering knight f6 in the first place. Here against knight f6, it's important to start with bishop to c4. And really a nice story about this variation. While I was working on the course, I think I actually finished covering these lines maybe like 3 or 4 months ago while the candidates was still going on. And I think I already had the lines sort of covered, but not really this particular one with knight f6. And this really, I really stumbled across this one when I saw the game played between Maxim Vachier-Lagrave against Alexeyenko. And I think this is really, I've been seeing the candidates in the fantasy variation in the candidates tournament. I think that's really a very good sign for us as fantasy players. Here bishop c4 was played by Maxim. It was actually blitzed out, so he was already in prep, and white has a very nasty threat of bishop takes on f7. So here Kirill, after thinking for a while, played the move queen c7, which is not the best, and we will come to that a bit later. I also covered some of the alternatives here, as for example knight b to d7 allows a very strong queen b3, hitting the f7 pawn, and after something like bishop h5, knight g5 is very strong, increasing the pressure on f7, and after queen e7, we can take on b7, mate rook b8 with queen takes on c6, and after h6 we can simply retreat with the knight, meet ed4 with cd4, and the upcoming endgame is just much better for white because we are up a pawn. We can play rook e1. So there is not really much to talk about in this line. And other than that, as I said, knight takes on e4 would allow this thematic bishop takes on f7 and knight e5, picking up the bishop next with a winning position. And yeah, then we can move on to what was played by Kirill in the game against MVL. This queen c7 move. With the idea that bishop takes on f7, black will be able to take with the queen. But here Maxime played a very strong move. He took on e5, and here knight takes on e4 would have been met with bishop f4, and after knight c5, white can castle, mid knight e6 with bishop g3, and after bishop e7, knight e2. White is preparing to play knight e4 and maybe something like knight d6 next with a very nice advantage. But in the game, after d5, bishop takes on f3 now was played by Alexenko, with the idea that after queen takes on e5, black is putting pressure on the e4 pawn, but MVL goes for a very strong move and a very thematic idea for the fantasy. Plays bishop f4, sacrificing the e4 pawn. And obviously, after thinking here for a long time, Kirill realized that queen e4 was very dangerous here after knight e2, because if black takes, we can take with a king. And we're just going to play rook e1, rook d1, and the enemy king is almost getting mated. Not quite yet, but I mean, it's just getting crushed in the center. So this is already completely winning for white as early as move 13. So queen e4 wasn't played with queen h5 by Kirill, but after knight d2, knight d7, castle is long. White had a very nice advantage with a bishop pair, and had quite a flawless conversion, I would say, in that game in Ekaterinburg this year. So that's about sort of the famous game from the candidates with queen c7. Another move that black can go for is bishop h5, with the idea to just sidestep bishop takes on f7, but we can simply castle, and after knight b to d7, we can play the move king h1, which it's really the most flexible move in this particular position. Bishop g5 would be also an interesting idea, but I really like this move once the enemy bishop is committed to d6. So for example, if here, you can see that black hasn't moved the bishop yet, so bishop e7 is very playable, and yeah, I mean, black doesn't really have any problems since our bishop on g5 is now a little bit pointless. So instead of this, I much more prefer the move king h1, and we're gonna be deciding of our next moves, really depending on what black does, because if black plays bishop d6, we can play bishop g5, but if black plays bishop e7, then you know bishop g5 is not as great anymore. So against bishop e7, we have to adjust and play queen to e1, which is a much stronger plan, and we are preparing to bring the queen over to the king side. And now black usually takes on f3 because the e5 pawn is under attack, and after bishop takes, I really like taking with a pawn, strengthening our center, and after castles, bishop e3 by white, queen c7, knight e2, knight h5. We can finally use that g file for the rook, and yeah, I really like white's position with the bishop pair, and a really nice pawn center combined with pressure on the g file. So white has a nice advantage here. So instead of bishop e7, bishop d6 would be a little bit more active by black, but here we can go bishop g5, as I already said, and after castle short, we can play the move queen e1. Here black has two moves. h6, for example, will be losing on the spot already after taking on f6, and the main issue for black is that knight takes on f6, runs into d5, and after bishop f3, we can take on f6. All of a sudden, we can destroy black's king side after f takes on g7. And after queen takes on f6, the problem for black is knight takes on e5. And yeah, due to this discovery on the queen, white is simply picking up a pawn without any position. So yeah, black has to really be careful about this idea with bishop takes on f6. So queen c7 would be a better move in that regard. But after knight b to d2, we're going to be following a model game by Dxe4, one of my favorite upcoming talents. So, I mean, yeah, I don't really think I don't really know if we can still call him a talent as a well-established 2700 Grandmaster, but the point that I'm trying to make is that I think he's going to be, potentially a world title contender in the future years. So after rook e8, Dxe4 played knight h4, preparing to bring the knight to f5, and already introducing exchange sacrifice ideas on f6. If bishop g4, we're going to be meeting it with knight f5 and then take with rook. with nice play on the f-file after queen h4 and rook f1. And in the game, we have, after knight h4, we have takes on d4, cd4, and bishop takes on h2 happened in the game. If knight to g4, we can do the same, knight f5, and meet knight takes on h2 with rook f2, knight g4, rook f3. And you can see that knight h2. Then rook h3 would be possible, so there's no repetition, in case you are worried about that. And if bishop g6, we can just play queen h4, attack this knight. And we also have e5 ideas on the next move, with a very nice initiative for white. And in the game, bishop takes on h2 was played, but I really want you to understand that there's nothing really much that you need to be worried about. As long as bishop h2 does not come with a check, then black, it's investing quite an important tempo in this kind of positions to grab that pawn, and we can simply play knight f5 now, and we're going to be playing queen h4, and that move is actually going to come with a very nice tempo. And this bishop and also will be threatening e5, and then this bishop on h5 will be lacking protection. So bishop g6 was played in the game, but after queen h4, attacking this bishop, and introducing knight takes on g7 as another very important motive. Bishop takes on f5 was played, rook takes, bishop g3, hitting the queen, but after the calm queen h3, white is just completely winning. Knight e4 was played in the game, but after rook f1, increasing the pressure on the f7 pawn. Knight b6, bishop d3 was actually a very nice move, switching the action onto the h7 pawn. Rook takes d4 was played, but after the flawless rook takes on f7, rook takes, queen h7, king f8, and queen h8. I mean, Jeffrey just made it black, and there's no squares for the king, and I really view this as one of the very nice games that was played by white in this line. And you can see that simply having gone for that early king h1, staying flexible, then it also everything mixed up quite nicely here, because bishop h2 did not came in with a check, and we had time to just bring our pieces nicely, while black was simply defenseless against our center and our pressure on the f-file. So I think this is a really thematic game for the line. And with that being said, I think, this is really move by move stuff. So against knight f6, we played this bishop c4 move, because bishop d3 is not as great, because we would be having some issues with the d4 pawn. So again, I really advise you to go to the Move Trainer technology and nail down these variations, because you really want to be playing bishop c4 against knight f6, and you don't really want to mess up the move orders here. And in case of knight d7, which is what I consider to be the main move, and what is recommended by Erwin Lamy in his course, we're going to be playing bishop d3. This is the setup that we go for, following Fabiano's footsteps. Here, black plays knight f6. We're going to be castling short, and black has a choice again between either bishop e7 or bishop d6. Bishop d6 is the big main line, but we're going to be covering bishop e7 for starters. And here we're just going to be playing bishop e3. And as you see here, previously we used to play king h1 because we were worried about knight g4 ideas, but now that the bishop is on g4 already, there's nothing really to be worried of. So we can just play bishop e3 without playing king h1, even despite the fact that king h1 is still a very useful move that we can make. But just, we're preferring to develop first. So bishop e3, castles, knight b2, d2, queen c7, and now king h1 is again very useful. Rook e8, queen c2 again comes very nice here, because we're overprotecting the important e4 pawn. Black plays bishop h5, and now we're following it up with a very nice prophylactic move. We're playing bishop g1, preparing h3, bishop h2. In some positions, we're simply, keeping the bishop on g1 from where it's not going to be targeted with knight g4. So bishop g6 was played by black, but here knight h4 is really nice, preparing both knight takes on g6 and also knight f5 ideas in some positions. And after rook d8, we can take on g6 after pawn takes. I really like to make a move on the other side of the board and grab space with a4. I think you can just stop here and say that white is better with a bishop pair. But yeah, for the sake of this video and for the sake of this repertoire, I think it's better said. We're going to be going a little bit deeper just so we can explore some of the typical middle games that could arise from this opening. And I've picked here two moves for black. One of them would be a5, which is sometimes played automatically by black. After a5, we can just play the move knight f3. And if bishop d6, knight g5 is very strong. Preparing to play bishop c4, hitting f7. And then we can also bring the queen over to the king side with a very nice attack. And other than that, in case of bishop d6 in this position, we can play b4, which I find to be a very interesting pawn sack, because if black decides to take it, after the bishop takes b4, knight f3, we got a very nice situation where white has simply a huge center, despite, being down a pawn. And we have a lot of compensation for it. For example, after knight f8, we can just play knight g5. And if knight e6, we can trade the knights, play bishop c4, attack the rook. Obviously, taking on e4 would not be an alternative for black, because we can take on f6. And then after the pawn takes queen e4, we will be up a piece. And after bishop c4, rook e7, we can continue with d5 and mate knight d5 with rook f3, preparing to play rook f1 with a lot of compensation for the sacrificed pawn. So yeah, I think this is already giving you quite a good idea on how to deal with this bishop e7 move, and we can move on to the more I think more popular stuff, which is bishop d6 in this position. And yeah, I think this is a bit of a crossroads, because white used to play the move knight b to d2, but then yeah, black was considered to be fine after b5. And here it's really where the interesting part is, because there is this sort of new move that kind of refreshes the whole variation, which is knight a3. And as you guessed it, it was played by Fabiano Caruana. And it's actually very tricky, because the same old b5 is not going to be as useful here, because in the other case, the knight on d2 would have been sort of a little bit misplaced. I would say maybe slightly misplaced. But here from b5, the knight can pick the other route to e3 via c2. And as you will see, the knight is coming in the game really nicely. After knight e3, castles, the knight is reaching the f5 square, attacking the bishop. And after queen c7, again, this really nice queen c2 move, just making sure e4 is well defended, and we're also breaking the pin. Bishop g6, we can eliminate the bishop pair, play bishop g5, creating a very annoying threat of bishop takes on f6. And after c5, d takes on e5, knight takes, queen takes. This is all forced. Bishop takes on f6, spoiling the structure. After pawn takes, bishop takes on b5. Bishop takes on e4, and queen f2. White has a very nice position due to the safer king, and black has this sort of ruined structure on the queen side. And this has been so far the gameplay between Caruana and Firouzja, which eventually ended in a draw, but white was definitely pushing, and you can definitely check this game out in the model game section for more details. And that would be pretty much it about b5. And now we can actually look on to what Erwin recommends in his lifetime repertoire, which is the move bishop takes on a3. But personally, I see this move as being quite double-edged, and Yeah, first of all, if you don't really know this by heart, I think it's quite a risky decision to give up the bishop pair like that. I mean, talking from a strategical point of view. But I have to really reckon with this and say that, yeah, I'm thinking 1a3 is a very sound concept if, black follows it up with the, good moves. So after taking 1a3, castles, I think Erwin mostly is focused on rook b1 and a4 in this position in his course. But I would personally like to throw in h3 first, attacking the bishop. And black has a choice between taking and playing bishop to h5. Taking on f3 is again like a bit risky strategically, but black has a very nice reaction here. For example, after takes, knight c5 is a very deep point of taking on f3. And the main idea is that if we take on c5, there will be queen d4. And if bishop e3, then the d3 bishop will drop. So we have nothing better than playing bishop to b2. And here black has another strong move, which is knight a4, hitting our bishop from b2. So I have to defend it with queen f2. And after knight takes on b2 and queen b6, black manages to get into the endgame phase. Even though I still feel like there is some play left after rook takes b6. And now I really like bishop c2, rerouting the bishop to the other diagonal. We can play e5, after knight e5, bishop b3. I think this position should be objectively equal, but because of this pawn being slightly weak on c6, I think there's still like something we can play for with moves such as rook c1 or rook c2. So I think this is still like a little bit easier to play as white. Although the, with best play, the game should end in a draw. And instead of taking on f3, bishop to h5 is the other move for black, where we're going to be playing the natural queen c2 by now. And after queen c7, bishop g5. Black has two main moves here. He can take on f3 now, but it's not really that logical. I think people that take on f3 would do it in the first place. But we're going to be covering it anyways, because it's connected with this c5 move, where black is trying to strike in the center. We're going to be playing d5, and after c4, we can simply play bishop e2, and we're sidestepping the attack. We still have nice pressure on the f6 knight. And here, after analyzing this quite a lot with the engines, Lila Zero comes up with an interesting exchange sack for black after knight e8. This is not really that relevant from a theoretical point of view, as this position is quite fresh and there are no games with it. But I think it's still giving you a very good idea of how the game could potentially go. So after knight e8, we're playing bishop e7, and after knight e6, just remember that we're not rushing to take on f8, because that wouldn't really give us an advantage, as black is getting a super nice blockade. But we can play this king h2 move, which is really nice, sidestepping any queen c5 ideas potentially. So in this position, I've covered again three moves for black. If f5, now once the position opens up, it's a good moment to take the exchange, and now give it back with rook takes on f5, and after knight takes, pawn takes e4, you can just play king h1, and queen e5 is the best move, but after, in order to defend the e4 pawn, but after bishop takes on c4, white still should be better, being up a pawn, and instead of f5, knight b6 is another move. But here again, we can take on f8 in quite a good version, play rook f1, and for example, after f5, rook to f2 is a very strong move, just avoiding any pawn takes on f5 followed by e4 tricks. So rook f2 is very strong, and now we can safely take on f5. And with something like queen c1 to e3, black doesn't really have that much compensation left. And other than that, black can also try his luck with b5, but then we can open up the queen side with a4, and after a6, can finally take the exchange, as we are able to open up the position with a4. So this is again very nice for white. And instead of this knight e8 move, black can also throw in the check with queen c5, and after king h2, play knight e8 without allowing all of this exchange sack with bishop e7. Or we can just play rook to d1, threatening to push d6, connected with bishop e7 ideas. So black usually plays knight d6, but now I really like going bishop e7, and if rook c8, we can play rook f1, threatening to take on f7, and after f6, rook g3 is very strong, threatening to take on f6, and after king h8, bishop h5 is a very nice move, and we can just bring our queen, and we're having a lot of attack both on the king side and also keeping an eye on the d7 knight. So yeah, this is very nice for white, and if after bishop e7 black plays rook e8 challenging our bishop, we can take on d6 and then collect the c4 pawn, as after knight c5 we can just play a4. And even though black still has some compensation for the pawn, I feel like white should be better here. And with that being said, we can have a look on what happens if black is going to meet bishop g5 with bishop to g6, which I think is more likely for the people that meet h3 with bishop h5. So here the idea is to take on f6, and really the only move is to take with a pawn, because knight takes on f6 would allow us to take on e5 with a knight. And after pawn takes, we can play queen f2, preparing to bring our queen over the king side. Queen a5 is a move for black, which is winning a pawn, but we can just play rook c1 and meet queen a3 with bishop b1, which is a nice move, just making sure the queen side is protected, and then we can play something like knight h2, knight g4, put pressure on the f6 pawn, and I just feel like it's a bit easier for white to play, since I just feel like our king is much safer. So that's pretty much it about bishop takes on a3. This is a good move if black can follow it up correctly, but if not, then I think there are certain risks to this move from a strategical point of view. And the last move that we have left here is castling short, and after knight c4, attacking the bishop to c7, bishop g5 is very strong, pinning the knight and putting a lot of pressure in the center. If b5, for example, attacking the knight, we can play knight e3, attacking the enemy bishop. After bishop h5, again, you are probably already familiar with this queen c2 move, and after rook e8, you can just play knight f5, and yeah, this knight is just very annoying there. We can play rook e1 next with a very nice position, and after bishop g5, rook e8 is the main move, but that can be met with queen to c2. And here black doesn't really have a lot of things to do, because we're threatening to take on f6, and then we're just gonna be either spoiling the structure on the king side or winning a pawn on e5. So that's why black has to sort of give up the tension and take on d4, and then take on f3. And here the only way to try to make counterplay for black is to play bishop b6, hitting the d4 pawn, and after that we're gonna be taking the bishop, and now playing bishop e3, defending the pawn. And here, in order to not give white a free advantage, black has to strike in the center with c5. But this is, yeah, I mean, it's kind of tricky to make this move, because it's a pawn sacrifice. But yeah, after queen c6, black is winning back the pawn. But the trick is to actually not get fooled by that and play for compensation with knight to g4, because the obvious knight takes on e4 can be met with a simple looking b4, and after knight f6 you can play a4 with bishop b5 in the air, and in case of a6 you can just play rook a d1, and we are ready to push b5 next, and that majority combined with the bishop pair should give white quite a healthy advantage already. So instead, Again, this is a bit of a computerish move, but it is the best line for black, and it's to play knight g4. But it's really far from obvious. After bishop to d4, rook e8 h3 is important to go with a knight from d to e5, attacking the d4 bishop, because if knight e5 is being played, you can just play bishop e2 with a much better position, threatening to push b4 and b5. And after knight d to e5, we have to take on e5. And after knight takes bishop e2, rook d4. This is a little bit of a longer line, but we still have a little bit to go. Rook a to d1, activating the rook. And after bishop b5, it's been a long way to get here, I have to admit. But I think this gives you, quite a good understanding of how the game could go. And this is really one of the very best line available for both sides. And yeah, I still think from a practical point of view, white should keep the easier game with realistic winning chances from this position with bishop against knight. Even though, if you turn on the engine here, the position should be close to equal. But I really feel like from a practical perspective, white has very realistic chances to play for a win. So yeah, I think that was it about this D4 video. To sum things up, we've been covering the fifth bishop e6, ed4, and bishop g4. As I said, ed4 is really popular here nowadays, especially in online chess, and also quite a lot of games with it over the board. And yeah, just keep in mind those details that I've showed you a little bit earlier. That after knight f6, castles, bishop g5, bishop c5, knight g5. Short castle, you want to be taking on f7 with a bishop, which is quite important. I hope you have written this down by now. And yeah, remember this detail. Remember that against Erwin Islami's course, we're going to be playing this bishop d3, following Caro on a scheme, and after bishop d6, we have this refreshing move with knight a3, with the idea to play knight c4. So this is why black can try the move b5 or to eliminate our knight. And yeah, we've just covered it a few minutes ago. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and hope to see you in the next chapter.